Okay.
We're on.
Yeah, we are on. Sorry, I had to give one last pull of the A&W. Zero sugar. Delicious.
It's like we're sponsored by A&W all of a sudden, which we're not, by
though.
the way. But
we get nothing from it.
It'd be great if we were.
Other
We
than
do
a
love it.
delicious, refreshing treat.
Yeah, we are big fans of that. Okay, just a crazy 24 hours alone has been insane with what's happened.
Yes.
So we have a lot to get into with this show today.
Yes, we will get into the U.S. strike on Iran. We'll dive into all those details and what to expect and what's headed our way. What could be the response from the Iranians? What kind of political response are we seeing in all of this? Some of it predictable and some of it not necessarily predictable. We'll get into details on all of that. But after we're done talking about that, in our next segment, we have a special guest. So Peyton McNabb, many of you saw the video with Peyton. She's a high school volleyball player. You know, your common kid that jumps into high school volleyball, loves to play, and all of a sudden she ends up in a game with a transgender player who spikes the ball off her face and injures her in a significant way. I mean, it was unbelievable video. You saw it all over the place. It was incredibly difficult. She's suffered lasting injury because of it.
Right.
And she was sort of thrust into this role now of someone who is now pushing for women's spaces and, of course, women-only sports, especially in high school. And so we wanted to talk to her. She's in town on Monday for an event in Santa Fe. So we thought we'd catch her early. She's going to come down, sit here in studio with us. Our next segment, we're going to talk about how she ended up in this spot and how sort of sometimes you get selected in some of these things to stand up, and she's done it.
Right.
And it didn't just stop with what happened on the court. There's another incident, too, that we want you to hear about as well. But she's going to be part of a huge event in Santa Fe on Monday. We want to push that, let you know that it's going to be going on. And we'll have Peyton sitting right here in studio with us in just a few minutes after we finish talking about what happened in Iran. And then very special deal. We got a special storm to show you, by the way, which is crazy.
Right.
And then you and Ella go and visit a museum that was the site of the crime of the century.
Well, it was the world's largest art heist that's unsolved to this day. It's a museum in Boston. Ella and I went to visit it, took some pictures. I can't wait to tell you guys all about it, as well as a documentary that if you've not heard about it, please stick around. We're going to end the show with that. I think you'll find it fascinating.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get right to it though, because obviously the strikes in Iran, there is really nothing that is, that's all that anybody's talking about this morning.
Oh,
so.
It is changing the face of the Middle East. There's no question. This has been something that's been long in the making. Iran has been an enemy of the United States and a sworn enemy of the United States from their perspective for the better part of 40 plus years. And so what happened yesterday, about 5 p.m. Eastern time, was we saw 7 B-2 bombers fly over to Iran and drop what you're looking at right here. That's the GBU-57. That is the largest bunker-busting bomb on the planet, which can go down about 200 to 300 feet and explode. This thing is a 30,000-pound bomb. Now, what you're looking at here is the B-2, which can carry 2 of those. By the way, the B-2 has massive payload capabilities, but it shows you how big those bombs are. It can only carry 2. So what we saw here was the military in the United States get all set, and then they sent these things out of an Air Force base in the United States in, I think it's Missouri, I believe, and flew all the way after refueling to Iran, goes in under the cover of darkness, and blows away 3 different nuclear facilities there. Now, as far as the map goes of what was hit and what was not targeted, well, the only thing that was targeted were these 3 facilities in Iran. And again, they're Fordow, which you've heard plenty about, Natanz and Isfahan, right? These 3 different facilities were all hit to varying degrees. I think Fordow was probably hit the hardest with at least 6 bunker buster bombs there. So, and don't totally know exactly how it all went down as far as the damage goes at this point. They're still having to figure that out, because basically what they did is they shot these things down a chute basically that led down into the underground bunker, which is below a mountain in Fordow especially. Okay. So we don't know exactly how that's all going to play out yet, but just to give you an idea, another little map here to give you an idea of what happens at some of these places. Okay. So this is what we think. Now, you can't be totally sure because the Iranians aren't exactly handing you a list of, hey, here's what each of these facilities does, and here's what you can destroy if you'd like to blow them up. But Fordow, uranium enrichment for the most part there. Natanz is also uranium enrichment, at least they believe, and Isfahan is uranium conversion, okay? And it's believed that they had uranium enough to make about 9 to 10 bombs, or they were closing in on it. They had enrichment rates of 60+%. Getting from 60 to 90, where you have to get for a weapon, thought to be fairly easy to do. So this was one of those things where the Israelis said, we got to get going on this. The United States has known we've had to get going on this. Trump has said for 15 years that he is not going to let Iran get a nuclear weapon. And so this was sort of the culmination of that. And it's very interesting to hear what the Joint Chiefs are saying about it.
Right. So let's just take a listen to this. This is the Joint Chief General Dan Kane. He's explaining kind of what happened on this mission in particular, how it all went down, and some of the details that you may not know about as of right now.
And just one quick thing. It's a fairly long description, so we may jump in and out of this a little bit to listen to him, but he does a really good job of explaining how they did this and how, we talked about before this all went down, the United States was the only country that could do this. Okay, Israel has a lot of weapons that we've provided them, and they're incredibly proficient at their own defense. No question about that. But you can't do these sorts of things without what we have, and this is what we do best. And this is what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is talking about.
Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications.
Okay, hold on one sec right there. So what we did was we sent a bunch of B-2s out west over the Pacific. They weren't really doing anything. They just sent them out there, right? And then another package, the 7 B-2s that would actually strike Iran, they went to the east and were like, shh. And they just keep on going. So again, some of this stuff, crazy, but they want to go and create this sort of sense of mystery, and it was very quiet. That's one of the things about all of this. There were no leaks. No one had any idea, and that's going to matter with what we talk about.
Well, and very little people actually knew that this was taking place to start with for the whole reason that it needed to be a secret, so we could actually get away, get this done.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and keep listening.
The 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Isfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats.
So that's fascinating, right? So we literally sent some fighters out ahead to be like, hey, we're here, just to see what they had.
Right.
Right, just to see if, all of a sudden we could get some surface-to-air missiles that lock on to our fighters, so then we'll know, okay, the B-2s could be facing this, could be facing that. Nothing.
Right.
Right.
And how brave are those soldiers, those pilots, to be the ones
what they do
to go do that? Yeah. I mean,
that's
just
what they
super
do.
Impressive to be part of this organization.
And there's so much that goes into these things, right? So they send the cruise missiles in. I think they do that to soften up the target, to make sure there's, I assume they were concerned with, they may have some defense capabilities on the ground there at Isfahan, so that they want to make sure those were taken out before these guys went flying in again too. So amazing stuff as they keep going here.
The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordo and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
That's amazing
That
stuff,
is
right?
amazing. Yeah, well planned. This whole program was well planned. And I think we kind of, we don't forget, but I just think it's something that we need to make sure that we're hitting on is Trump gave warnings to Iran, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I mean,
60 days ago.
60 days ago.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure he reiterated it because it's not like people haven't been talking about this ad nauseum.
question.
I mean, if you want to look at our last episode, we went into great detail on what the plan would be with graphics and videos and everything of these secret stealth bombers that we're going to drop these. So
Yeah. Well, and I think the interesting thing is he says, and this is actually a tribute to the Israelis as well, which is nothing. Nothing was shot at. Nothing happened. So we had the maximum amount of protection for these B-2s as they went in, right? The best technology possible, softening everything up, set to go, and they don't hear a thing. Now, we won't go on and keep listening to this, but basically what the chairman says is nothing. Nothing on the way in shot at them. Nothing on the way out shot at them. They didn't face a single bullet. Nothing. Not a rocket, not a bullet, not anything. So that gets back to what the Israelis had done, having complete superiority in airspace over Iran. And to show you where this whole thing has gone since October 7th, 2023. I mean, just think about this for a second. When Hamas decided, we're going to go in there and do this, we're going to go slaughter 1,200 innocent Israelis. We're going to go in and try to change the face of Israeli-Hamas relations and Hezbollah as well. They decide we're going to go after Israel. Since that time, Hamas is gone, basically, has been destroyed. Hezbollah has been destroyed. Syria has fallen. Number one adversary, one of the big adversaries of the United States, but a much bigger friend to Iran. They're gone. Now Iran has no control of their own airspace, does not have a nuclear program anymore, and they're done. As far as, not being the sort of bully on the block. Amazing. It's the law of unintended consequences with the one decision by Hamas. And that day you saw people in Qatar, especially some of these guys who ran Hamas, who live in very fancy homes in Qatar. Didn't last that long. They were all celebrating and everything else in their hotel rooms and their fancy places. And all of a sudden, they're all gone, by the way. Most of the Iranian leadership for their military is gone. The Ayatollah's life is very much in danger because they went out there and did this. And it gave the United States an opening, too, to go after a country that had done everything they could over the past 40 years to kill as many Americans as they could. Remember, you had the Iranians go in and fly and go after the Saudi Arabians' oil fields for no good reason. No good reason. They propped up everything in Yemen with the Houthis. I mean, these guys are the worst of the worst. And for anyone to defend going after them and saying it's a bad idea, it's craziness, especially when we don't have boots on the ground. We're not going to have boots on the ground. That's not what this is. But this is going to be very interesting to see because you have a very, very educated and in many cases a great country in Iran as far as its people go. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they end up doing with this.
Right. Well, let's get some of the reaction to this morning because first there's some signs here in Tel Aviv. Just check this out. I mean, obviously it says here, if you're just listening to us, it's a big, huge signs that say, thank you, Mr. President. And it's pictures of Trump on big side buildings, the sides of buildings.
And by the way, Tel Aviv, not known as, say conservative Republican central. Tel Aviv is can be a very progressive city, actually,
right,
within Israel. But obviously the Israelis are all pretty much on one page on this one. There's not a whole lot of deviation.
Right. I'm not sure how many people thought that letting the Iranians have nuclear power was a great idea, except Senator Adam Schiff. I mean, apparently we need to be able to get permission to do these secret attacks from Congress, according to Senator Adam Schiff. So let's take a listen to him. He's on CNN here talking about, this this atrocity of Trump not seeking approval first for the secret attack.
The failure to brief Democratic lawmakers, the making this just another partisan exercise by the administration when it comes to something as serious as the decision to potentially engage in warfare with another nation, it means that you're not going to have the whole country bought into this, which is a real problem. If everything goes well, then maybe it works out fine in the sense of not being an issue that tears apart the American people. But if things don't go well, if Iran retaliates, if we get in a escalating war with Iran, and you don't have the country bought in because the president didn't seek the approval of Congress, because he didn't make the case to the American people, because he didn't even inform one of the parties in Congress, that's when you have a real problem engaging in warfare on a partisan basis. So a lot of risks here for the country, which, is the reason why you come to Congress in the first place. It's the reason why our Constitution says Congress has the power to declare war, not the president.
Okay, a couple quick things before you get to your thing. This was incredibly close to the vest. Do you think if President Trump had briefed members of Congress that this thing would have stayed close to the vest? You're talking about the safety of American pilots and American personnel. So I think the reason it was as quiet as it was is because it was kept close to the vest, and it has to be.
Right.
I mean, that's President Trump's number one obligation. Keep our troops safe as you're doing this. Right? If you're going to do these sorts of things, you don't go to all these lawmakers, especially lawmakers on the other side of the aisle who would have no problem sabotaging this and saying, hey, this is going on, for their own reasons. Now, many would not probably, but some probably would.
Well, and calling it a declaration of war, this was not a declaration of war against Iran.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is, I just did a quick search on how many presidents in the U.S. that I could even find, say, like since the 1940s, that have gone and done attacks without seeking approval from Congress because they have executive power.
There's obviously no one on the list. Trump's the first one.
No,
right?
Actually, it's a thick list.
What?
Take a look at this little graphic. I'm pretty proud of this little graphic I put together here for everybody. Presidents who attacked without Congress's approval, okay, based on what they knew they needed to do. If you want to zoom in a little bit, Ella, I won't go through all of these, but honestly, from Harry Truman in 1945, you have Eisenhower doing it, JFK with the Bay of Pigs. Guess what? He didn't get Congress's approval to go after Bay of Pigs. You have Nixon, who had to do secret bombings in Cambodia. Gerald Ford. You had Ronald Reagan, who had to do it in Libya. You have Bill Clinton in 2009 in his tenure. He went after Libya, Syria, Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia with drones and attacks.
Speaking of Captain Drone.
Yeah, Captain Drone did not seek.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, he didn't. Sorry. I was waiting for your next one.
Oh,
Captain Drone.
Oh, Captain Drone. Barack Obama also here goes after airstrikes with Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, again, without seeking approval from Congress. And finally, Donald Trump did this already in his earlier years of being president against Syria, Yemen, Somalia, and Iraq. The list goes on and on. This was actually really thick. I'm just hitting some real quick ones that it is pretty customary for presidents under their executive power and the fact that they're in leadership and they're working with generals and our military and they know what they need to do. They're not going out there and saying, excuse me, guys, could you make sure that this is all,
well,
okay?
Not only that.
Because it's not a declaration of war, by the way. None of these were declarations of war. They were attacks, which is exactly what just took place. The thing that's frustrating is you wake up on Twitter or X and you start seeing our state leaders going after saying the exact same thing that Schiff just said. That is just like, well, they didn't seek our approval. They didn't come to Congress. And this is an overreach of our U.S. Constitution. And I feel like saying, have you read the U.S. Constitution? And do you know the difference between a declaration of war and just, hey, we have an attack. We need to take these guys out. This is dangerous for everybody, and we're going to do it. I mean...
Well, in a more raw political sense, listen to what they're doing. They're making a process argument. Process arguments don't work in these situations. They're just inane and stupid. And so this is it doesn't make any sense. It's just not the right way to go about this. Again, our guy, we'll say it again. I don't have his quote today, but our guy Fetterman comes out and says, John Fetterman, senator from Pennsylvania, Democrat says, yeah, we needed to do it, had to be done.
Yeah.
And you got some other Democrats that are doing the same thing. They're like, yeah, it's the right thing to do. I mean, so that's the right approach to take. And I think it's interesting because you listen to Van Jones, who I'm going to want to play a little bit of sound from him. He's basically a Democratic strategist. He worked for Obama. He's one of these guys who oftentimes is able to kind of, in a little more clear-eyed sense, be like, all right, what does my party need to do to make sure that you're not hurting yourself with everything you say about Trump? It just doesn't make any sense. And I think he did something interesting. This was just before the attacks, but he said something that I think would be illustrative of something that could be very helpful for especially the out of power party. When the president makes the right move, don't get in there and find a way to try to criticize him. Just say, it was the right thing to do. This is the kind of stuff we need to do. It kind of creates this sense where people are like, yeah, maybe they're of differing parties, but at least they understand how things are working. But in this political world we live in, it doesn't always work that way. But here's Van Jones.
In some room, I was also in the Holy Land very recently. I think progressives underestimate how dangerous Iran is. Iran is not a normal country. Normal countries don't blind women because they showed some hair. They don't empower little gangs and proxies to surround a country and fire rockets and rape people. So Iran, the two things are clear. The what, they cannot have a bomb, and the why, because they say death to America, death to Israel, and death to all the Jews. One of those should offend you if you're progressives. At least one should offend you. And so the question, though, is the who and the how. Is Israel going to take out this nuclear capacity by dropping people there who blow it up, or is America going to take it out by dropping a bomb that blows it up? But the what and the why are clear, and I think progressives should get on board with that. We cannot have a nuclear-armed Iran. I was in the region. You were in the region. This is a very dangerous power.
Okay. Makes sense, right? Makes sense. But then there are people on the right who are losing it. You saw Tucker Carlson's been out there going crazy over this, right? Saying, no, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? When you have one of the most dangerous nations in the world who's trying to really is a massive danger to the United States. It is. So I don't know what Tucker's thinking, but one of the other people who's on this side is called the woke right now. It's basically the woke right and the woke left sort of emerging. Right. And so now you have Candace Owens, who not a fan of Candace Owens, okay, at all. But this sort of thing, what you have to realize is now in the independent media age, what you have is people that are going to stoke any outrage machine they can to wring audience out of it. Okay. And that's what she's doing here. Listen to what she says to a question from apparently a U.S. military member who's going to get ready to walk away because of what's happened with Iran. Like, she's going out and defending keeping Iran as allowing Iran to become a nuclear power. This is crazy from the far right.
LG19 writes, serious question, will there be jobs or community military members can join when I get a dishonorable discharge for not contributing to delete people or my body for the interests of a certain foreign nation benefit? I love this question. I do believe that if war in Iran is on the agenda, and that appears so, get dishonorably discharged. Who cares? Who cares? Why should you go die in a foreign land? You now have the benefit of 2020. You can think about those men and those women who died because they were pitched that they were serving their country because there were weapons of mass destruction, right? They were serving their country because the Taliban, they were serving their country, whatever, and these people gave up their lives. And ask yourselves, for what? And the answer to that question is for the elites. They're like toy soldiers. And I would have said a few weeks ago that Trump would never do that to you. He would never just throw you into an Israeli war. But right now, our planes are flying in the sky, and things are going nuclear. So I don't have that confidence anymore. And I'm comfortable with people being dishonorably discharged because the dishonor has come
I'm
from
sure
our
you
heart.
are comfortable because it doesn't affect you.
Right. And again, we're not going into war with Iran. I mean,
Right.
so we've got to stop stoking that fire.
Well, and also she's a raging anti-Semite. So that's just a fact about who she is. I mean, and it is. So again, this is happening from different angles, right? That's the point we're making on this is that, again, I think you need to look at people like this, and they are trying to stoke an audience, and they're doing anything they can for that. And she's telling people to go and and get dishonorably
discharged.
Just irresponsible. And certain people just reveal themselves to be fools. And
Right.
she has absolutely
And
done that.
we've not heard Trump say, hey, we're going to send soldiers
Nobody's
into
saying
it. I
that.
mean,
It's a straw man argument. Nobody's
it's
saying
so bad. Well, let's take a look at Harry Inton's most recent polls from CNN, really showing that Trump has deep support for these particular strikes. Let's take a look and listen to what he said.
Picture overall, but on this particular question, and overall, I feel like there's more support for Donald Trump's positions than is comically acknowledged. Oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, look at this. 79% of adults agree on that. They agree with Donald Trump. Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. 83% of Republicans, 79% of independents, 79% of Democrats. When you get 79% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans agreeing on anything, you know that that position is the very clear majority in this country. And so the American public is with Donald Trump. They definitely oppose Iran getting nuclear weapons.
Okay, so interesting stuff. So in those numbers actually from before the strike. So if this strike turns out to be effective, I think those numbers will continue to go up. Trump's in good stead on this with his own party, and I think with independents and Democrats as a whole on this thing, if it doesn't expand and turn into a nightmare. The question, though, will become, how does Iran respond?
Right. And I think that this is very nerve-wracking a little bit because we do have to kind of wait and see. And obviously, I did read a tweet last night that said, well, we need to be praying for safety.
Absolutely.
If you're in a big city, you need to have your, head on a swivel, so to speak. I think just there absolutely could be secret cells in the United States, that really are seeking retaliation. It's something we're going to have to keep watching and hoping that doesn't happen.
There's that. Yeah, absolutely. So that it'll be very interesting to watch how all that plays out. And then also the Iranians have come out today on Sunday and said they're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so why does that matter? What does the Strait of Hormuz mean? Well, the Strait of Hormuz is basically a choke point that Iran has some control over. Remember, a lot of the oil that comes out of the Middle East, 26% of it goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And so we'll just show you a quick little map here, and you can get a little idea of what this is about. So we'll just kind of focus in here, Ella, and you can see. So you got the United Arab Emirates, and you have Iran on either side of this, Yemen on the side of this as well. So you can see that's a pretty tight point, right? And so Iran has said, we're going to block this off and not let oil out of here. Okay. And in fact, if you put things into motion here, we got a little video, which is kind of interesting. So what you'll see here is you'll see the activity, tanker activity through the Strait of Hormuz. So you can see the drainage out into the Strait of Hormuz, and you'll see how tight it gets here, how tight that area is. And we're going to pivot. You'll see the camera pivot here into the Strait of Hormuz right there. You see how tight that is, right? And so that's where they're talking about, because they have some measure of control about what goes through there, okay? And so we'll see. Now, the question would be, would they do that? Well, it would tank the world oil markets. It would skyrocket oil. Guess who gets most of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz? China.
Right.
And China is the number one buyer of Iranian oil. So now the Iranians say, well, we'll let the Chinese oil through, but won't let anybody else. So if you think the United States or the Gulf partners of the United States in the Middle East are going to be like, no, sure, you guys go ahead and just shut things down, I don't think they're going to allow that. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio did comment on what he thinks the probability would be if they were to go ahead and try to shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
Do you expect Iran to move to close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that, because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that. But other countries should be looking at that as well. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours. It would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not just by us, but from others. So, look, they're going to say what they need to say. These are the things that need to happen for their own internal politics and so forth. But in the end, we're going to judge them by the actions that they take moving forward. We had 3 objectives. We struck those 3 objectives with decisive force. And that was the point of this mission. And that's what we achieved. What happens next will depend on what they do. They want to negotiate. We're ready to negotiate. They want to get cute and do things that are dangerous. We have responses available that are devastating.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, I wanted to show this clip of Marco Rubio really clarifying we're not at war with Iran. So let's play this one for you.
Are we now at war with Iran?
No, we're not. This is not a war against Iran. This is very simple. 67 days ago, the President of the United States sent the Iranians a letter, and it said, you're not going to have nuclear weapons. You're not going to have a militarized nuclear program. Let's negotiate. I want to do this diplomatically. I want to do this peacefully. They tried to play him along the way they've played every American president for the last 35 years. And, the president told them, if we don't get a deal, which is what he wanted, then I'll have to handle it differently. And that's what he did last night. He handled it differently. But that was an Iranian choice. We didn't make that choice. They did. By playing games with Donald Trump, they made a huge mistake. And President Trump acted last night. And I think the world today is safer and more stable than it was 24 hours ago. And a bunch of these countries putting out statements condemning us, privately, they all agree with us that this needed to be done. They got to do what they got to do for, their own public relations purposes. But the only people in the world that are unhappy about what happened in Iran last night is the regime.
Yeah, unbelievable. And again, that gets back to our point of that law of unintended consequences, that October 7th, 2023 changed the Middle East forever, but not in the way that the people who did the killing thought it would.
Right. And Marco Rubio, I just feel like he has just been so on point with everything when it comes to the Middle East. And when he's asked the direct questions, he just seems to really have just a very specific answer for everything.
Well, Marco's, and I also think he, spent a lot of time in the Senate. He knows the issues very well. And so when he goes on and he went out, we didn't show this, but he went on the CBS morning show, Sunday morning show, and ate Margaret Brennan alive again.
Oh,
it's just like a regular thing.
I know we should put all the clips together of that happening and show that as a little kicker one day.
It's
so
just
funny.
not fair, right? Which is fine. I think what you want is your leaders to be able to outclass a journalist who tries to paint them into a corner. But I do think it's interesting because the whole tenor of the Middle East has changed. It really has. And you and I talked about this. I don't want to give us too much credit, but we talked about this about 3 weeks ago. We said that Trump was going to face a choice where if he was just peace only guy, right? And just, I'm going to get peace, not without demonstrating power. We said that he was going to have to demonstrate power to get peace.
Right.
Okay. So he had a choice. So if he was just going to be peace alone guy with no stick behind it, just all carrot, no stick, he was going to get tested. And he's been tested, and he went with the stick. And so that's very interesting. We talked about it 3 weeks ago. We're talking about it in regard to the Ukraine. But now it ends up being a much bigger issue with Iran, which nobody saw coming. So the question now is, where do we go from here? And where do the Iranians go from here? And Vice President J.D. Vance laid this out very clearly, as he often does.
Has been very clear that we don't want a regime change. We do not want to protract this or build this out any more than it's already been built out. We want to end their nuclear program, and then we want to talk to the Iranians about a long-term settlement here. We believe very strongly that there are two pathways. There's a pathway where Iran continues to fund terrorism, continues to try to build a nuclear program, attacks American troops. That's the bad pathway for Iran, and it will be met with overwhelming force. There's another pathway on the table here. There's a pathway where Iran integrates itself into the international community, stops funding terrorism, and stops trying to pursue a nuclear weapon. This is a reset. This is an opportunity for the Iranians to take the smart path. We certainly hope that they will.
Okay. So really what is interesting about Iran that you don't see in other countries is prior to 1979, you had one of the most progressive countries in the Middle East. And with 92 million people, and a lot of very successful people in that populace that could take this country, especially if they were not under the jackboot of the regime that they're under. What could they become? Mm-hmm. They could become an amazing power in the Middle East in a very different way. So it's going to be interesting to see if that happens. I don't know that it will. The United States isn't delusional enough to think that we can go in there and turn Iran into this whole new country.
Right.
Or revert it back to where it was under the Shah, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know how that happens, if it happens at all. But it's hard not to look at that and say, boy, if you got Iran back to where they were in the mid-'70s, boy, you would have a country that would be incredibly not only powerful, but a country that could bring much more prosperity to their people. It's amazing. We'll see. I don't know if it'll happen.
Yeah, we'll have to see. My money is not on that. I don't see them changing anytime soon. I'll say that.
Well, yeah, you have to get rid of the leadership, and then you have to see who fights it out to, I don't know. I don't know either. But that will be something we will observe and not something we will force, which is a difference.
Okay, so we're going to come back after a quick break with Peyton McNabb. She has quite a story. She'll be in Santa Fe on Monday. We can't wait to tell you why she's here and her backstory. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the No Doubt About It podcast. Back to your hosts, Christy and Mark Ronchetti.
Well, we are back, and we are so excited that we have Peyton McNabb. She has traveled from Houston via North Carolina, is my understanding, right? To be here in Santa Fe for a Title IX anniversary event happening tomorrow in Santa Fe. But we're going to get into all those details. But first, we are super interested in actually, introducing you to our audience. We did talk about you a couple of years ago when, unfortunately, you took a pretty brutal hit on a volleyball court when you were playing against a biological male who was playing on a women's volleyball team. And you're just in high school. You're just playing an everyday day of high school volleyball. And it changed the course of your life, I would say, at least the last 3 years or so. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit first, before we get into everything, a little bit about yourself, where you live, introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll kind of jump in a little bit.
Yeah, so I am from Murphy, North Carolina. I've lived there my whole life, and I come from a really small town, very family-oriented community and school and all of the above. So I'm very thankful to have that foundation, and absolutely love it. But I have a big family, and, this stuff was I never thought I would be doing this ever.
Yeah, so it is crazy, right? So let's talk about that. You played volleyball, right? So was it your senior year?
It was, yes.
Okay, your senior year, you guys are getting ready to play, and you're taking on a team that has a biological male who says, hey, I identify as female, I'm going to play on this volleyball team. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you get into the game. Is it known to you guys at the time, like, watch out for number 6 or whoever, like, look out? Like, tell me how that went leading up to this.
Yeah, so I was a 3-sport athlete. I played 3 sports my whole life, but with volleyball, I'd been playing against this guy since my freshman year.
Okay.
Because it was legal. It became legal in North Carolina my freshman year in 2019. So there was really nothing we could do about it. But we did have to practice differently in order just to prepare for him. And we weren't the only school that had to do that. Other schools had to practice differently, literally just to receive his ball. They weren't like an all-star team or anything. They just had an all-star player.
So would they like center the whole offense around him?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Because
Okay.
they wouldn't have won if they didn't.
Yeah. And were they good because of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can we show that video for those folks who have not seen this video yet? It's pretty famous, but if you haven't seen it, take a look at this video where Peyton...
It just couldn't even prepare. Like, I mean, that's just...
I don't know how you prepare for that, quite frankly. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's concussion.
And it takes you out. I mean, that you went down so fast. So tell me a little bit about, you had a concussion. Tell us a little bit about your injuries that you had to deal with.
Yeah, so when I got hit, I went unconscious for like 30 seconds in a fencing position, which is how your body reacts to brain injury. And then as soon as I came to, they rushed me off the court. I ended up going to my primary doctor as soon as I could, because in North Carolina, like, the concussion protocol is just to wait and try to rest and sleep and wear sunglasses and be in the dark as much as you can, see if it gets worse before you go to the doctor. So that's exactly what we did. It kept continuing to get worse. We went to the doctor. She immediately refers me to a neurologist, where they explain that I have a concussion, permanent whiplash, and a small brain bleed. So there was a lot of things that came through that. I had vision problems, balance issues, cognitive issues. I had to get extra help in school, which has never been a problem. I was always like top of my class, had to be good because my dad was my principal, so like I had to be.
Keep it between the lines. Yeah, we're not messing around. I get
it. But anyway, that was never a problem, and then it was. And this was my senior year, and I had been working my whole life for this, and I had the dreams of playing collegiate softball, and that was all taken away because of this game. So I was never able to perform the way I had in the past, and I couldn't drive for a few months. Like, there was just so much that came through it, and I'm still dealing with today. Of course, I've been blessed enough to heal a lot since then, but it's still something that I'm having. It's almost been 3 years, and I'm still having to deal with it.
Okay, well, it clearly put you in kind of the news headlines. It puts you pretty much in a headline. And now you travel the country and you speak, something you said you weren't planning to do. This was not like your life. Your goal was to go to college and play softball, right? That's probably as far as you'd gotten.
Yeah.
So tell us about what has transpired now. Like, what's your life like now? You're traveling, you're speaking. Tell us a little bit, like, how did that get started?
Yeah, so public speaking was never my strong suit. That was the only class I ever failed was public speaking.
Oh, I teach high school public speaking. You should have come to my class. I would have had you well prepared. But anyway, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. Okay,
because I couldn't. Like, I would cry if I had to talk in front of my class of 20 people. So it was definitely out of my comfort zone for sure. But I spoke out for the first time at the North Carolina General Assembly right after I turned 18. This all happened when I was 17. My parents said I can wait until I'm 18 and then make that decision on if I want to say anything or not. And it was a hard decision to make, but, well, not. It was just, I don't know, it was just like a really complicated process. I would have never thought it would go this far, but I drove out to Raleigh and I spoke for this bill they were trying to pass, and then it all just exploded from there. I started working with independent women, which they've just been absolutely amazing from the beginning, just championing this issue and really elevating these stories and getting them out there for everyone to see. So that's exactly what happened with me, and it's been such an honor to be able to travel the country and speak up for these girls and all over, because every girl in every state deserves fairness and safety, and it's so sad that their elected officials don't see that.
It is amazing to see, but there's another side of this too, which is when you get involved in one of these political issues, and I know you know this now, it's one of the things, unfortunately, we had to learn as a family too, that once you step into this, it's not all good, right? It's not all friendly. How have you, first of all, what kind of pushback have you gotten? And how do you process that to be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm getting pushback, but I'm doing the right thing.
That's exactly that's exactly how I get through it. At the end of the day, like, I know what I'm doing is on the right side of history, and what I'm fighting for is the right thing. So any pushback I do get, I usually just don't care. But
right.
Also the support has just been overwhelmingly more than the pushback. Yeah. And I think that's been the general theme as a whole.
Can I ask, I mean, we had Riley Gaines on the show too. And so I'm curious, what is your take? Because she's gotten into this, you know, I don't know if you saw this Twitter fight she got into with Simone Biles on maybe Simone saying, hey, it's why don't you
You're great.
Okay.
You're great. Sorry, guys. I'm doing a little producing on the fly, but it's a better angle for a camera. Sorry. Keep going.
But
as you were.
why Simone Biles was basically telling Riley Gaines, hey, why don't you go create a sport for transgender athletes? And, you know, and Riley came back and said, that's not my job. It's not the women's job to do that. Mm-hmm. What is your take? Like, do you think that trans students should be in their own classification? Do you think, what would, if in a perfect scenario, what would you think the solution should be to something like this?
Yeah, I think it's really simple. I mean, what Riley said, it's not the women's job to figure it out for them. That's their problem, and it shouldn't be put on the women psychologically and physically for them to deal with just because this guy wants to be a woman. So they can have their own category. That's what we've been saying from the beginning. Like, no one has opposed to that. But, you know, the biggest solution would be for everyone just to play in the category in which they were born to be into. So I think that's just like the common sense answer. But, you know, I don't know why, but it is a complicated issue. And I think Riley, you know, shut that down very well with Simone Biles. You know, this is an athlete, an all-American, amazing athlete who's going to go down, you know, in history for everything she's accomplished. But at the end of the day, like, no one would know who Simone Biles was if she was competing against a man.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, and you mentioned leaders and not always, you know, leaders protecting women. When we look at the numbers, and we've got the numbers here, when you look at the numbers, they're massive. Even among Democrats, but among Republicans, 94% say women's sports should be for women, right? And 67% of Democrats say that. Why do we have leaders, even in the state of North Carolina, who don't seem to be able to grasp that? Have you been able to find some sort of through line here, or are you seeing progress? Are they waking up to it?
I think I really don't know, because, you know, we've been saying this, that 80% of the country pretty much agrees with this, and it's hard for 80% of the country to agree on anything.
Right.
So for this to still be an issue and still be such a hot issue with that much support behind it is just, I mean, it makes zero sense.
Yeah.
And it would have to be just for political reasons because there's no other explanation. I mean, people on both sides are able to see common ground on this, but at the end of the day, the elected officials who were elected to protect the girls and women in their state are failing to do their job just to protect themselves. And that's really sad. And if someone thinks like that, they shouldn't hold that position.
Yeah.
Well, and when this went down with you in high school, what was the reaction from people? Did you feel supported? Did you not feel supported? I mean, tell us a little bit about the emotion that happened around that.
Yeah, it was really weird. I mean, this was like a really weird time. This is in 2022, so everyone was still kind of like afraid to talk about it. And where I come from, like, this doesn't happen. So we had zero idea how to go about it. We were confused. Everyone was confused, and like the emotions were just so high. And you know, legally they weren't doing anything wrong. So our hands felt like they were tied, and obviously none of us agreed with it, but we still had to go on with it. And we were forced to by our North Carolina High School Athletic Association. And, you know, after I started saying something, I mean, my community was so supportive of me. They were absolutely the best. It's like such a unique situation where I live. It's so small and everyone knows each other. So like everyone knew what happened and they were very much on board. Of course, some weren't because they don't want to hurt feelings or look like they're being mean or whatever. But it's being more mean to lie to these people and act like this is normal.
And it's also not sticking up for the safety of young women trying to play sports.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really,
the biggest thing.
You look at that. I don't know if you know what happened to the trans player, if he went on to play in college or not, or what happened. But
yeah, he actually got 2 full-ride scholarships to play. Wow. But then after I started speaking out, they took them away, claiming they didn't know that it was a guy.
Did this person ever apologize? No.
Yeah, no. He did text me and with no remorse, but this was right after I spoke out, just saying, like, basically I was obsessed with the situation and wouldn't let it go.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of was since my whole life
really.
was like all now. So
You're like, I kind of am obsessed with it.
Yeah, it changed the trajectory of your life.
I can't drive, so yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of an issue for me. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal there.
And your vision and your cognitive, like let's keep that going. Okay, so this was not the only thing that has happened. It seems that. So explain a little bit. You go to college, right? You start school, and then explain what happened. You're in a bathroom, and a transgender man, I guess, is that how you refer to that?
It'd be a trans woman.
Oh, a trans woman.
We're all mixed up.
I'm all mixed up.
A guy in a dress. Okay. Yeah. So
comes into a bathroom, and you record him. So
what happened? Oh, yeah. We'll play the video first, and then you can explain what's going on. So let's take a quick listen to this.
Why are you in the girls' bathroom?
I'm a trans girl.
But you're not a girl.
Oh, we're doing one of these?
Yeah.
Interesting. Never had this before. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah, I pay a lot of money to be safe in the bathroom.
Me too. Excuse me. Rude.
Do you think that's okay?
Okay, so
explain
what's going on with this guy. Great color on him, by the way. Mustard is a great move. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, well, apparently he bought that dress just so girls would give him compliments because he wanted. Anyway, it's just like sick. But anyway, I go in the bathroom and this is like the last day of classes.
And this is on campus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm on my public school campus in the dining hall bathroom where there's always field trips and little girls running in and out of there and family members and everything. And I walk in and I see this like fully grown man in a dress standing there, and I just couldn't believe that was happening to me, especially with I advocate so heavily on girls saying no to that and speaking out on it and calling it out, and it would have been so hypocritical of me just to smile and be like, "Hey, girl,
hey,
like I'm not doing that."
Right.
So,
Good call on the. It does look like there is. So is that some sort of fanny pack over the belt. It's a very, very progressive move.
Yeah, he was doing, I don't know what he was trying to do.
Definitely not a fashion guy. So,
but the biggest thing, like, my most important thing is I'm never wearing that.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah. No girls are ever wearing that.
That could be the most offensive thing of all.
Exactly.
Really. But anyway.
Okay, so here's what happens is you record this guy, right? You confront him because, like you said, it'd be hypocritical of you not to do so, right?
Yes.
You felt like, I'm an advocate for this. What the hell are you doing in our bathroom? Certain, but that's basically what you're saying at that point. What happens after this? Because you faced another consequence after this. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I filmed it for my safety because, again, like, I didn't know who this guy was. I didn't know if he was like a student or what, and I didn't know how he was going to react with me questioning him. So I did that for my safety, and then I posted it for awareness because I could not believe this was happening on our campus, and a lot of girls, come to find out, didn't know either. So anyway, I post it, and it absolutely explodes overnight. I get a call from the school and my sorority the next day setting up meetings with me. I went through 2 different hearings with my sorority and ended up getting my membership terminated immediately because
they kicked you out.
Yeah, I made them look bad, and then, which is like, whatever, I'm not, and they tried to get me to take a class to know how to post on social media, and tried to get me to apologize and like all this stuff, and I was like, how about no? Like, I'm not gonna lie and like act like I didn't believe this just to fit into this like group. I'm not gonna do that ever. So that was a whole other thing. And then the school, I actually had to go under a 9-month like investigation by the school. They were investigating me, and because he was trying to get me charged with sexual harassment and get me expelled. And after he reported me, I reported him back, and they totally disregarded my complaint, saying no normal person would have a problem with this. They kept his, and thankfully I had an attorney who like really cared about getting me through this, because if I hadn't, then I would have definitely lost and been charged with sexual harassment for that.
Oh my gosh.
And I ended up winning that case this past January, but it caused me to have to move home and do school online, because the school was even concerned for my safety. And this guy's like walking around freely in his sundresses every day, just fine. But then like during the hearing saying how horrible what I did was, and how no one in the LGBTQ community is safe with me on campus, and like I still haunt him, and like all this stuff.
So and let's go back to the letter from the sorority, by the way, because it's a pretty well-known, it's Delta Zeta, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and actually my mom's at Delta Zeta.
Okay,
She is. I'm going to tell my mom. We're going to call my mom. But let's just take a look at this.
She'll write a letter on your behalf.
Oh, trust
Don't
me.
you worry.
We get my mom on this, and you can bet that things are going to change.
That's right.
Fast. So just an interesting thing here. They mention in this letter here that you violated a couple of their policies. One of them was the anti-bullying policy and the moral prejudicial conduct.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not mentioning at all, your safety in all of this or anything else. Were you shocked? Like, what was the reaction of the girls in the house?
A lot of them were completely on my side about it. They did not want me to leave, but there was probably a handful of them who were trying to get me out from the beginning just because of all the sports stuff. They didn't want me there to begin with, so they thought this was like the perfect opportunity to get me gone completely, and then it ended up working. So I don't know. I thought it was like a slap in the face. I mean, this is like supposed to be a sisterhood or whatever, and like supposed to uplift women and empower women, but that's obviously not what it's about. Like, they completely disregarded my feelings and my safety and how I felt about the whole situation. And I was in a really this was a really hard time for me, because I'm just trying to finish school, and now like I'm having to fight against this, not only like this guy, but also the school who's helping him. And, my sisters who are supposed to be there are nowhere to be found. Like, they'd throw me out just so they don't have to get involved. So it was really hard, but it was also eye-opening that this gender ideology push has literally affected everything.
Yeah.
And I think what's shocking, and I've talked about this on our show quite a bit, is how this is really being perpetuated mainly by women. It's the other women that are saying, no, let's stick up for the trans movement. Let's keep these people in the sports against our girls. They go exactly against what Title IX was even formulated for. And I'm sitting here going, what is wrong with you? This couldn't be more anti-women, what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about you are doing this big event tomorrow. Her Game, Her Legacy, okay? It is happening in Santa Fe.
It's on Monday.
Oh, sorry, on Monday. Yes, on Monday. And it's happening from 1 to 4, I believe. And we have a small graphic. It is going to be at the Santa Fe Farmers Market Pavilion. And there's a lot of guest folks showing up to celebrate Title IX and getting people to say, hey, listen, enough of this madness. We want women playing against women, right? That's basically the gist of it, is it not?
Yes, yeah. This is basically celebrating like all the women before us that worked so hard for us to even have these opportunities, and now we're just fighting for the next generation because they're trying to take that away. So I'm really excited. This event's going to be amazing. There's such amazing speakers that are coming, and I'm very, very thankful to be a part of it, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, Education Secretary Linda McMahon.
Yeah.
She'll be there. Former
cool.
Governor Susana Martinez. You got some other great guests on there as well. It is going to be good. Again, it's at Santa Fe, Monday, 1 to 4 at the Farmers Market Pavilion.
At the Farmers Market Pavilion. Do we need tickets to go? Does anybody need tickets, do you know, to go? Or you can just show up?
Oh, you can show up and sign up online.
Okay, easy enough. That's easy enough. And we'll put that in our show notes as well for those of you. But it's hergameherlegacy.com is where you can register for that. So
and can I just ask you one more before you go? Yeah. Where do you go from here? So if you could look out and you could say, ideally this is kind of the path I'm hoping to follow, what would you do, Peyton? Where would you go?
I think I'm just going to go, I have no idea. This is like, so I had never had a plan really. I thought I was going to be a teacher or something. And then, just the thought of this ever happening to my younger sister, or if I get blessed enough to have daughters one day, like they should never think there's a possibility for a man to be on the other side of the court. So that's been my whole fuel through this. Like constantly, what would Jesus do? Of course, I could never compare to everything he's done, but in any way, if I could shine that light in any way, that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm just going to follow his plan. I tried to run from it at first,
but he kept chasing you.
I think that's the quickest way for him to laugh in your face is to make your own plans.
Exactly. Don't make your own plans. Jesus always says, nope, I've got a different direction for you. You're headed this way. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I know how that goes. So.
Absolutely.
Never promised it would be easy, but he promised he'll be there. And I think that's what you're getting. Very cool.
Well, Peyton, we appreciate you coming to New Mexico. New Mexico's blessed to have you. Keep up the fight. Keep up the voices. We need this to be out there in the media and out there for people to hear, and especially for young daughters like my daughter who plays volleyball, right? Like I want this to be changed on a statewide level, and I hope that your voice gives credence to that. So thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Peyton. Appreciate it.
You're listening to the No Doubt About It podcast. Back to your hosts, Christy and Mark Ronchetti.
Or Ella
and
Ronchetti.
Christy Ronchetti.
Yeah, Ella or
Up,
Christy
everybody.
Ronchetti. We are joined by Ella Ronchetti, first-time caller, long-time producer.
I've literally never been on the podcast before, so I just would like to say this is cool.
Well, welcome. What did you think about Peyton McNabb? How great was she?
I thought she was so good, and she was really just. I loved her. I thought she was well spoken and she was very entertaining.
Yeah, she's a great advocate for all you girls out there playing sports, right? Like
especially volleyball.
Yeah, especially volleyball. Absolutely. Okay, so Mark now has switched gears. He is behind the scenes taking Ella's spot because me and Ella have to talk about something. But before we share our little story, of course, Mark has a weather story for you.
Well, yeah, I really do, as a matter of fact.
Okay, let's
take a look here. I mean, if you look at this storm, so every time you see the lightning strike, you can see the tornado. This is from North Dakota.
Wow.
And just look at that. With each lightning strike, you see the tornado there. It's unreal. It's terrifying.
Crazy.
Yeah, and this is, I believe it's got to be a time lapse, but it's just unreal.
Well, and those tornadoes at night, I mean, I covered one of those when I was a news anchor and a reporter. It was an F4 that came through Shreveport the Saturday night before Easter Sunday.
Right.
And just wiped out a whole section of the town and made its way up through Oklahoma. It was terrifying. And I had PTSD from that because I said, how do you know in the dark if these are coming your way?
That's insane. That's so scary.
Well, and also there's some meteorological reasons you get a lot of these things at night. I mean, that definitely there is some support for that. It's the conditions and a variety of reasons why I don't have to get into it now, but it definitely happens, especially in the Midwest, that phenomenon at night is something that happens pretty regularly, and it's just terrifying to watch this. I mean, you just see it. It's crazy. With each light up, you can see it. You look real close, you can see the tornado down at the base of the supercell thunderstorm. So
hopefully nobody got hurt in that situation.
Yeah, and it was from, just so you know, Enderlin, North Dakota.
Wow.
A couple nights ago. So, by the way, a lot more rain on the way here over the next couple of days. Yeah, coming up Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to get pretty wet.
We'll take it.
So that's some good news.
We'll take all the rain, all the precipitation we can get here for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we, Ella and I visited Boston this last couple of days. And I don't know if any of you out there have seen this documentary on Netflix. It's called This Is a Robbery. And it is talking about, it's a fascinating documentary, by the way, but it's about an art heist. The world's largest art heist in the world. It happened in the 1990s. They've never caught the people who stole the art, and they've never recovered the art, which is over like $500 million in art. Rembrandt's, Degas. I mean, there's a lot of famous artists' work that were stolen, and they don't know who did it. And so it's in this beautiful museum called the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Did I have that right?
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah.
And basically, if you look at these pictures that Ella and I, this house has been renovated, by the way. It's this beautiful house, this old house that Isabella built in the early 1900s and put all her beautiful pieces of art. And on these frames, some of these frames, like if you look at that frame, go back, Mark, real quick. Go back. Okay, that little frame.
Don't get so nasty here. Okay. I'm working on it here.
I know. Okay.
He's not very great at this.
So see the little picture frame below the big artwork? The little one had a famous piece in there, and it was just taken. And I thought that was crazy. Ella, you watched this whole series on TikTok, right?
Well, okay. So a couple years ago, I got pretty into it. I found it on TikTok. It was just like this whole story about how these security guards were working one night, and one night they literally just walked into the rooms and all these paintings were gone. They cut the paintings out completely clean out of all these frames and like left the frames but took the art. Mm-hmm. And basically they've literally never found any of these pieces of art ever again, and they don't even know who did it. And I think they offer, I think it's $3 million if you return the art.
Oh, I think it's more than that. I think it's up to 10 million, something like that.
Really?
The
and
reward
it's
is
no questions asked. If you give the art back, they'll give you the money.
Well, and it's art that you're never going to be able to sell because it's famous. Like there's a couple of famous. So these are the pictures. Like you just walk in and there's pictures of these. I mean, there's just big frames, and they don't say anything at the museum.
They don't even mention the art heist. Really, they mentioned it. There was one room where they had this flip book where you could go through and see what art was missing, and basically like
see, like there's a little one right there.
They had like a flip book that just says like, oh, this is what got taken, but they really don't mention the art heist that much. But you do go through each of these rooms. It was the most like, I think, creative museum I've literally ever seen.
Yeah, we had to take a picture in front of
and then
course.
2 more behind you guys.
Yeah, there's 2 right there.
There was a room that was just full of these massive.
So yeah,
frames.
The Dutch room. They took like 6 pieces out of the Dutch room, and besides the robbery though, this museum is the most eclectic. Right here, this is a courtyard that's in the middle of this house, and if you'll just play this video, I took a quick little video of it.
Yeah,
it's like the architecture is unbelievable. It's so pretty. And I just, I'm not blown away by every museum, if I'm being honest. This museum blew me away because there were so many different type of pieces in this museum. I can't speak highly enough about going to see it because I thought, she definitely, Isabella was a Catholic and she collects a lot of Catholic type pieces from like the 15th and 16th century in Spain and Italy. And I mean, her collection was unbelievable. Don't you think?
Yeah, it was insane. She became, I think, super rich because her dad died and he gave her all this money, and she just instantly went and started collecting all this art and was like, oh, I have nowhere to keep it. And so she started building this massive museum, and she just kept all of it in this museum, which was super cool. And I just thought it was super cool because it was insane because you think about it, it's like, oh, it's a museum, but it's full of her own personal collection of art. And it was super full.
Yeah, and she has said you can't, in her will, she left money to take care of the place and said no renovations, no, so that's kind of why they had some security issues when the art was stolen, is they don't have cameras in there. They've just made all these rules about that they have security guards in every room.
Yeah, and now they built it out a little bit, so there is like a more modern part of the
Section
museum.
of it.
Like there's a modern add-on at the beginning where they have like security and you're not allowed to have your backpack in there, and it was super like they definitely did ramp it up a little bit with like security. So then like, you know, you can't take the art anymore, but it is super cool because there is
take
like
the art anymore.
Well,
unlike before when you could just rip it off whenever you felt.
Okay,
like
that's
it.
not what I meant. I just meant like, you know, like before they didn't really care that much about security, and now they're
Clearly
like,
not.
Well, yeah, and now there's like this whole add-on, and there's the original museum still there. You can still see the outside in the original museum, but it was really cool. They obviously didn't add to the original museum at all, and then they give a bunch of backstory of like people in her life. It was actually really cool. I thought it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I would. We gave it 2 thumbs up. So if you're in Boston, I know there's always things to do in Boston, but if you've been to Boston, done the Freedom Trail, need something to do inside on a hot day or a rainy day,
it was super hot too. So.
It was super hot. It was a great experience for us, so we highly recommend it. And by the way, watch that documentary if you're looking for something to watch. It's fascinating, right?
Super cool.
Okay, so that's it for us. We appreciate you joining us. We will be back later this week. We will be back on Wednesday night. We appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to drop us a comment down below, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Tell everybody you know about the No Doubt About It podcast. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the No Doubt About It podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at No Doubt About It Podcast.
No doubt about it.
The No Doubt About It podcast is a Choose Adventure Media production. See you next time on No Doubt About It.
There is no doubt about it.